Welcome back. Episode 2 of, I guess, I don't know how many of these, of School Champions. This time we got Cheryl with us. Cheryl Bryan, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing fabulous.
Doing good. We talked last week about School Champions, and we talked about some of the prophetic words of School Champions, and we talked about a bunch of stuff last week. But we kind of wanted to re-meet and talk through some background stuff of just kind of the heart behind starting it, and where we feel like this is going to lead, and kind of just even, I wanted to hit on even like the future and what we feel like this school will look like even just moving forward. So I know we talked a lot about this last week, but even just for you, Cheryl, like I know we kept saying, what is something that we feel like this school, like why is this school needed now? Why do we feel like this school is needed now and more than ever? And so I just, even for you, like to touch on that, like why do you feel like this school's great, and we know that the school's great, but why now, and why is it needed more than ever right now?
Because there's such a lack of champions out there.
True. Yeah.
Because we need to train up people that actually know how to walk in the Spirit. If they don't walk in the Spirit, they aren't really going to be spiritual champions. Yeah. And a lot of people train the mind rather than the heart and the spirit. So I would say that this school is needed to push past all of the linear thinking and get into the reality of walking in the Spirit. The champions in the Bible were always people that walked in the Spirit.
Yeah.
So they were always people that went above and beyond what other people did. And those are the ones we look back at and say, no, that guy was a champion. He was a champion. She was a champion. But it was because they were walking in the Spirit. So I don't think there are a lot of schools that teach people how to walk in the Spirit or practice the presence of God. I think they get caught in the busyness of the Martha syndrome. And I think that that's part of what we need to do. And I think that's part of why School of Champions was prophesied. And I think it's going to be birthing people that actually know how to live in the Spirit rather than just in the natural.
Yeah, that's good. Did you guys do a school? Did your grandpa do a school at all for like?
He did Bible college there, and it was a big one. And I'm actually headed over to Heidi Baker. Heidi Baker does a 3-month stint and takes people around. And I think it's going to be interesting the way that ours ends up. Where we end up going with this will be really exciting and interesting. Yeah. Grandpa, I just got from Paul Keith Davis some of his Bible college training manual. So very interesting.
That's amazing.
Interesting timing. Yeah. They just mailed it to me. And he trained a lot of people. In fact, I run into people that come up and say, oh, I was in your grandpa's Bible college, or I saw him casting demons out of people, and demons would leave people, and then they would go get in somebody else in the meeting. A lot of crazy stories from back in the day. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
I have a quick question. You just mentioned going with Heidi Baker's group. So what is that group? What's the purpose of that? That is a school, correct?
They do a school. It's a 3-month school, and it's overseas. And because of the persecution in Pimba, they have moved it to 3 separate months, different places.
Got it.
And so the purpose really is to walk in the presence of God all around and go and do. I mean, they're doing all of the pieces of it right there. So I think that we're going to get to do some of that.
That's
think
awesome.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that kind of where we're at in, we're 3 months out. And this next year, you're going in December, is that correct, or November?
All of November.
Awesome. So I think that'll be awesome to get some keys on what they're doing to bring back to really help what we're doing here at School Champions. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting timing for sure.
It is, absolutely.
I wanted to mention something that Cheryl touched on, but there's a lot of schools in the West, and there are Bible colleges. Of course, Jesus, when he was here, he did not start a Bible college. There was Bible colleges going at the time, but they were controlled by the Pharisees. And
that's true.
They were some of the best, most fastidious Bible training schools in the world history. But they didn't have the power of the Holy Spirit. And so we know that Paul the Apostle was trained in the Bible college, the Pharisees, but most of all of the other 12 weren't. But in the Old Testament, there is a tradition and the legends of the mighty ones that fought with David and the mighty men of Ziklag. That phrase is famous in the Old Testament. But I wanted to just read a passage of Scripture and talk into it for a minute, because the word that's used of the mighty men, and it's used just, for instance, Nimrod became mighty in his generation. That word is Gibbor in the Hebrew, and it means supernaturally empowered. It always means that. It never means anything else. So there were great warriors, and then there were warriors that were supernaturally empowered. Those were David's mighty men. And a lot of times it talks about the 30 mighty men. There was actually 36 before it was over. But I want to read this beginning explanation of the mighty men. It comes from 2 Samuel 23. It says, Abishai, son of Zeruiah, who was the brother of Joab, was the leader of the 30 mighty men. He once used his spear to kill 300 warriors in a single battle, and he became famous as the leader of the mighty ones. And it goes on and it tells all of their incredible exploits. But I wanted to pause and just focus on the fact that Abishai was the brother of Joab. Joab was the commander of the forces of Israel under David. And he was a great warrior, but he was not supernaturally empowered. And so Joab, as the commander, was the best soldier that you could be without supernatural empowerment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it's really something. His younger brother was over him in prestige, but not over him in rank. So as the general of Israel's army, Joab called the shots. But there was this cadre of supernaturally empowered young men that Joab understood they could do things that he could not do because they had supernatural empowerment. And his little brother happened to be one of those. I think it's an amazing insight into Scripture that there's the armies of Israel, and there's the general of the armies of Israel and all the captains, and then there's these guys that were the special forces of Israel. And they were special forces for one reason. They had supernatural angelic empowerment. And the stories that are told about them are just off the charts. Well, that's what we're planning for, and why we are calling this the School of Champions. They're not just people who have been through military school, been through Bible college, come up through the ranks, but we're praying for a supernatural empowerment that separates them from everyone else, not because they've known more or been around longer, but because they have a supernatural impetus that comes from heaven that distinguishes them from everybody else. I think the mighty men of Ziklag are the biblical type of what we're praying into for the School of Champions. Dread champions that have the supernatural element of power that goes beyond what you can do in the ranks of mere mortality.
So good. I love one of the stories. I was reading this the other day, and I read it. I feel like every time, and this is just, I guess, the Bible, but when you read something, you're just like, how did I read this? And I just glanced over it like it was like, oh yeah, that's cool, and then move on. And then you read it again, and it like almost like it hits you, like it hits you in just a different sense. You're like, wow, what the heck? Of when one of David's mighty men, it says he hunted a lion in the snow and killed it. I think it says he killed it with his bare hands. Just like thinking about that is like, that is the most manly thing you could do, like kill a lion with your bare hands. But like, I do love, even in the school, you know, one of the things that me and my wife were talking about is like, one of the things that I feel like is really cool with it isn't just that you're learning and sitting and hearing from people's like other people's wisdom and their testimonies and what they have to offer, but even pushing young people in a way of like, what does it look like to wake up early and quiet yourself? And what does it look like to work out? And what does it look like to like, and there's all these things I think as Christians, we just kind of there's move back past, and it's like, that's not a big deal. But then realizing like, if I'm called to be a champion, I don't want to just push myself intellectually. I want to be able to push myself in every way so that I know whatever God has for me, I'm prepared for it and I'm ready for it. And even just like that whole thing of dying to flesh, that looks like all areas, not just dying to flesh in the sense of like, oh, I don't really want to study for this thing that I have to do, but I'm going to push through and do it intellectually or mentally, but really pushing past the boundary of like, I want food right now, and having to push through that, or waking up at 4:30 in the morning being like, I really don't want to go work out, or I really don't want to sit down and like quiet myself right now, but having to push through that. And I feel like out of all of the things that we do, I feel like that's one of the things that at least for me, I see of like, man, that is something that takes, because it's like the longevity of it too, like waking up consistently and doing all that. It really, that's what creates champions and pushing them in those limits. And so, anyway, I'm super excited, and I think it'll be super awesome. But, anyway, so, I know that, just kind of moving through this, I know that one of the things that we want to push on, I know you kind of mentioned it, is just the spiritual aspect of stuff. And I know, one thing that I feel like I hear from a lot of people is like, oh, well, that's too spiritual, or that's too, that's like too much, or that's right. And not even about us, just in general. I feel like I heard that in YOM and heard that in all these different places, or we'll talk about something and people will just feel like that's a little bit too much for my mind and a little bit too much for me. But I know that's one thing that, Dave has said a lot of, is like, we are not called to be physical beings. We're called to be spiritual beings. And like, there are two worlds. There's a spiritual world and there's the physical. And if we're really thinking about it, we think of everything as like, okay, there's the physical world, and then whatever we do here kind of affects the spiritual. But in reality, the spiritual is way more real, and there's way more real stuff going on there, and that affects the physical. And when you start thinking in that way, it's like, really, what is not affected by the spiritual world? Like, everything's affected. And so, go ahead, you got something?
Yeah, here's I think a good general perspective of that. We are eternal spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience, but we're essentially and permanently spiritual beings. So for some people, 10 years, for some people 90 years, but though we're essentially spiritual and will be spiritual forever, we're having a temporary physical experience. Sadly, some people during those days of their temporary physical experience shut off their essential nature, which is spiritual.
Yeah.
And so we have to help people. There's no such thing as being too spiritual. How could you be too spiritual?
Yeah.
But there is such a thing as being way too carnal.
Well, it depends on their mind. To me, I would say to somebody that said that to me, I'd say, well, that's too spiritual for me, the way I think. I'm like, maybe that's true, but that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Unfortunate for you, because if you'll get yourself out of that carnal thinking and begin to set your heart and your mind and your affection on things above, the cares of this life will grow strangely dim.
Yeah.
And reality is, the carnal mind, we have some kids die young, some people live till 90. The Bible actually promises us much more than that.
Yeah.
Much more than that. And so what I want to do is push people outside the natural mind and get them back to what the Bible actually says. Bible actually says that Jesus conquered death, hell, and the grave. So there's all kinds of thinking that people will think I'm way too spiritual, but I don't think so. I think it's just what the Bible teaches. But the carnal minds of predominantly Bible college teachers and Bible college presidents have dumbed things down to where we don't have champions. We have really well-educated natural minds. Yeah. And God is, when my grandpa was alive, there were a number of people that walked in extreme signs and wonders and miracles. Today we see a little bit, nothing like in Grandpa's day. What God told me was that what we would see in our day would be a peacock compared to a sparrow of what Grandpa had seen. And I was like, what? But I believe that, and I believe we will see people walk into resurrection life, which goes far beyond the natural mind. So people that want to stay in the natural mind probably should stay away from this school.
Yeah.
I think it will stretch them to where they're not recoverable. But if people want to go above and beyond the physical realm, then that's what I think we're about. I think we're about pushing beyond the natural into the spiritual and bringing heaven and earth together so that Jesus' heart would be fulfilled on earth. So I think it's actually quite exciting what God is up to, and to find the people out there that are like, yeah, I want to go beyond what people think is possible. Jesus said nothing is impossible for those that believe. The question is, where are those that believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are, as we exist as a local church, we're kind of a high-octane burn for some people, as we are. But what I think people need to hear, if they're thinking about being a part of the School of Champions, is that what we're experiencing right now is just a launching pad for what we're trusting God for. Because, as Cheryl said, all things are possible for them that believe. There's a list that I call the short list of things for disciples to do. It's given by Jesus in the Gospels. It says, go everywhere, teach the gospel of the kingdom, not the gospel of the church, but the gospel of the kingdom, and make disciples. But it goes through casting out demons, raising the dead, healing the sick. And everybody's on that list somewhere. Some have not yet taken the gospel anywhere and shared it. Some have gone there, but they've never seen a miracle of healing. Some have never seen a demon cast out. I think everybody at this table at this point has never raised the dead, but we will at some point if we trust God and we lean into it. And so my father used to say, always stay on the stretch in God, never settle on your laurels. And so the goal is to press into the things of God and bravely go where no man has gone before. And, for me, I went to Portland Bible College, graduated from that, didn't see any manifestation of the miraculous whatsoever. Knew people that believed in it cerebrally, but just no one healed, no demons cast out. It was just mainly cerebral Christianity when it came to the power of God. And I remember taking a special course for church history between my second and third year in Bible college, and I was talking to the instructor, and I just said, "This is unspeakably boring." And we got to talking about it, and he said, "Well," I asked him, I said, "Why is the book of Acts so filled with energy and miracles, and church history has no miracles recorded in it?" He said, "Well, that's because they've edited them all out in church history." And we got to talking about that, and he said, for 2,000 years, the historians have edited out the miracles of church history, because historians generally are very, very conservative, and they simply don't believe in the miraculous realm. Yeah. So they record, and now somebody gets raised from the dead. Oh, that probably didn't happen. And so they edit that out and record, and somebody gets miraculous healed. Oh, that probably didn't happen. And so they edit that out. So in this conversation, this instructor, he said, there are books that are all of the records of signs and wonders and miracles for the last 2,000 years. And he said they've been edited out of historical Christianity by people who are cessationists. They believe that the miracles stopped with the apostles. And he said that this other genre is called the mystics. Well, here I am. My father was a church planter. I was raised in a Christian church. I was 2.5 years into a Bible college. I'd never heard of the mystics. And so in the year since Bible college, I've read about these men and women and children that had amazing power of God. and really exciting stories of people doing all kinds of signs and wonders and miracles that really challenge the Western mind, because the Western mind, in terms of the religious tradition, came from Augustinian theology, which had no miracles.
Well, and the Western mind is an enemy of Christ.
Yeah, the rational mind. The Bible makes that plain. Lean not on your own understanding, but instead, in everything, acknowledge the divine.
Yeah.
And so we just recently, I did some teaching on the mystics. And boy, it really challenged a lot of people. And you always have some people that it's just too much for them and they back off, which is always sad to see. But nonetheless, what we have to put out there is authentic Christianity, not Augustinian religion, but authentic biblical Christianity. And we need to cultivate it in our own hearts. And we're calling for young people that they don't want to do same old in Western tradition. They want to read the red, pray for the power, and live in the manifestation of the supernatural grace of God in their lives. And then altogether, granted, we've learned a lot about casting out demons. We see more and more people that are healed, but we're going to see people raised from the dead and every other amazing thing that is in the Bible. Yeah. And some things that, according to Jesus, go beyond what's in the Bible, because he said, greater things than these shall you do after I go to the Father. So anyway, that's what we're hungry for, is let's press into it together. Let's not be held back by Western religion or Western tradition. And let's believe that all things are possible with God, and do what we can do to yield ourselves to that supernatural power.
Yeah, my grandpa had meetings where everyone was healed instantaneously during worship, and God told me what we would see would be far, far, far greater than what grandpa experienced. So to me, I'm looking at that like, okay, that's the power of God in so many individuals. Grandpa was one person, and the power of God would show up where he was. What if the power of God was living in many, many, many people, and everywhere all of them went, people were healed everywhere. Yeah. The power and presence of God was so thick on them that they went everywhere and carried his presence. That, to me, is what I want to see the School of Champions create, that kind of a hunger and a passion, and that only comes out of intimacy. It doesn't come from any book learning, any intellectual, anything. It comes from abiding in him, who is love, which means becoming love.
That's good.
Well, it's like an atmosphere at that point. Like, I think that would be the coolest thing is even you saying like people would, like, worship would be happening, people would be getting healed, but then even like having people that walk into a church and just walking into that atmosphere of his presence, stuff just like right away
Falls
exactly
off.
is like just wild.
Yep.
Yeah.
But would you have something to say?
I was just had another question for either one of you to answer. I think sometimes if somebody is watching this, right, and they're looking at it and they're thinking that sounds awesome, but there's this huge fear in them, feeling like they're not at the place they need to be to even get here, right? But what is that place even at, right? They think, they come in here, they're thinking, man, I would love to do that, but I'm not ready, or I'm not educated enough in something, whether it's spiritual, biblical, something in their life. They're thinking, I can't do it because I'm not. So I would ask you guys, I think that would be a stumbling block for some, just in a mental place, not necessarily a reality. So
Well, I think that's a good question. So let me start with this. When the Bible talks about David's mighty men, it says that he was at Ziklag. They're called the mighty men at Ziklag. It says at Ziklag, they came to him day by day to turn over the kingdom from Saul to David. But it says they were discouraged, distressed, and in debt. And they were all of Saul's household. So they were coming from the old system, and they'd got their butts handed to them by life. And those are the ones that the power of God came on them, and they became the mighty men of Ziklag. So I think we all kind of feel like we're not at that level. The whole idea is we're going to ask God to take us to that level, because we're not stuck in the mud of Western tradition. And so we're just saying, God, if you're pleased to use me to the fullest extent of your desire, whatever niche you have for me. I want you to set the limits. I don't want to limit myself. I want to be used by God. And I think we'll see the same thing. People go from losers in Saul's household, distressed, discouraged, in debt, to become mighty men and women of God.
And what I think is that it's all about surrender. And so it's not about where you can get or what you can do. It's about, are you willing to lay down your life? Jesus asked the disciples to follow him. One of them said, I need to go bury my dad. And he's like, let the dead bury the dead.
Yep.
That's pretty intense.
It is.
So reality is, Jesus was saying, would you come away and go with me? Come and do something with me. And so to me, that's what I'm looking for, is people that will say, you know what, I'm ready. I've already, some people, it takes them a lifetime to figure out that the dirt world isn't the answer. There are young people that are like, yes, I want it all. I want all the kingdom. I want all of the spiritual reality. And I'm not even interested in all of the dirt world. If anyone's interested in the things of the natural realm, if that's their interest, this is probably not the best place for them. But if people are saying, you know what, I want all that God has for me. I want to surrender everything. I want to lay down my life and see what he can do. With one fully surrendered person, there's no limit to what God can do. And the real question is, who will surrender? Who will lay down their will? Most people, even if it's, I want to be in the ministry, it's like, no, forget that. Do you want to be close to Jesus? Do you want to come away and be his friend?
Right.
Because he's looking for friends that will just love him because he deserves it.
Right.
And those people, he'll trust to carry his power and his glory.
Let me say something regarding the phrase that Cheryl brought up, because, of course, the culture of the New Testament is far different than today. But when Jesus was looking for disciples and a young man said, let me first bury my father, we think of that as an event in the West. Your dad's already dead and you have a funeral, and probably within 10 days it'll be over with. In the context of Scripture, that was an event. That was a phase of life. And so what it meant to bury your father was that your father was aging and you were the responsible sibling, and you had to be with mom and dad during their retirement years. And when your dad finally did die, even if it was 25 years from then you handled the affairs of the estate, and then you were ready to shift gears and move on with your life. And the reason that I wanted to bring that up is that I think there are some out there, and you're thinking there's a lot to do, and I need to wrap up my business, or I need to help with this or that. That's exactly what Jesus was talking about. A young man came. Jesus gave him an opportunity to be a disciple. And he said, it's not the right season of life for me. And Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. You come and follow me. I think it's really important because I wonder if there's anyone listening to us today that it doesn't have a busy life. It would really surprise me if there was somebody just thinking, you know, it's just my life's bored. I'm sitting around here with plenty of money and nothing to do. And I doubt it's like that.
Yeah.
But I want to just underscore that call of Christ when he said, let the dead bury the dead, you come and follow me. What he was saying is there will always be things that will distract you and hinder you and keep you from doing God's will. Forget about it. Put everything else on pause and follow Christ. And that's the call really for the School of Champions. Let the dead bury the dead. You come and follow me.
So good. Well, I just add one more question, and I know we need to wrap it up, but kind of on the same premise of what you just asked. But if somebody is like, okay, this is a school that I'm really interested in going into, what do you feel like they need to start doing in the next 3 months, or whether that's mentally, whatever, spiritually, what do you feel like they need to start pursuing or start doing more of if they aren't already in preparation for this school?
Well, I think we'd all agree that the best thing any of us can do is pray more, and just incline your heart to the Lord. That is a Hebrew word that means push it towards God. That includes pushing it away from other distractions, and so I think that's important. What would you say?
I would say that if you're today listening and it's current real time, I would look at coming to the Isaiah 61 conference next week, because you'll get a little picture of the reality of the depth of deliverance and personal freedom. Because personal freedom this year will be about personal freedom. It'll be about actually becoming who you're called to be and walking into your destiny. And so that will require a death to self at a very deep level.
Yeah.
And no one walks into the full destiny that God has for them full of themselves. So really, it's a matter of learning to die to self and saying, not my will, but yours. So it's just like when you were saying, I don't want to get up early. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, too much I.
Yeah.
Way too much I. So if we get the I out of the middle of it and say, God, what do you want? I want to do what you want. So what do you have for me? And I think that they'll hear a lot of that if they can just watch the Isaiah 61 conference. It starts Monday night on the 9th, I think. And I think that that would give some ideas of some of the stuff that we have walked through. We have been through some pretty extreme deliverance, and it's not all just 25 years ago. Happens regularly. My most extreme deliverances that I've taken people through, most people have never heard any of the stories. They're too intense, and I don't even go public with most of it.
Yeah.
But reality is God is wanting us to carry his glory, and we should all be casting out demons. We should all be walking in the Spirit. And I was just talking to a friend last week, the other day, a couple days ago, and he was mentioning a big ministry that didn't believe that Christians could have spiritual influence or a demon. And I think everybody here at the table understands very thoroughly that that's not the case, right, Paul?
Yeah, I've had a couple things cast out of myself.
Okay, so just checking.
Yeah.
But I have, and I know we all
Yeah.
are in the process of being purified.
Yep.
And so for me, getting ready for the school would be going, what in me doesn't look like it will look in heaven? Let's start getting that out of me, because then we'll be able to walk as champions here in the dirt world, living from above.
Yeah, that's good. You have
That's a good
anything?
word. No, that's it.
Nothing?
Nothing.
All right. Well, I did the book that you were talking about. The book, is it called The Book of the Mystics? I know we're going back a little bit.
No, there's a number. The genre of literature is called the Mystics, but there is a book called The New Mystics, and there's a book called The Ecstasy of Loving God. Those are both books about the mystics.
Yeah.
Another book called is it 500?
500.
Yeah, 500 Saints Who Raised the Dead.
That's a really good one.
Phenomenal.
All those
That's
are,
older.
Yeah. All those are books of the mystics. And then, of course, the mystics are people who lived in the power of God, and most of them have individual books written about themselves.
Yeah.
Like St. Patrick, St. Gregory, St. Joseph of Cupertino, who flew regularly.
The floater.
That's why he's
The
called,
super floater.
Yeah. He's called the patron saints of aviators, because he would just fly from place to place through the air. And of course, though that happened to Philip in the New Testament, but those are kind of things that in the Western mind, it's like, what, is something like that actually feasible?
Yeah.
Well, let's
But
go
it's
back
written
to
in the Bible.
Go back to the garden. Do you think in the garden they had to walk through the garden all the time, or could they levitate and move to wherever they wanted to go? Because most of us are so stuck in what we know right now that we can't get outside that and go, what if the 90% of our brain that is not functioning was activated?
Yeah.
What if we were actually above and beyond where we're at right now? And I don't believe for a second God intended for us to just get less and less and less and less potent as life went on. He intended for us to actually abide in him, come into a full union, and out of that place of union, radical things would happen. And so I think it's pretty exciting because we have the privilege of raising a generation that can look through the front window or the what do you call it, on top of the roof, the sky,
the sunroof.
Yeah, the sunroof, rather than the rear view mirrors and out the back window.
Yeah.
And most of us were raised going, well, that's not what happens. That's not what happens. That doesn't happen. And it's like, no. We are called to look above and see what God says, and to call people out of living under the curse and live above all of that. It's pretty exciting.
Right.
And we're going to do it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I know we have the ecstasy of loving God on our book. What do you call that? Our book list of what to read for this. We have a whole bunch of books that if whoever comes and does the school that is a part of the school is reading,
Awesome.
we have that on there. We'll have to throw on the other ones and put it in there. But if you can, do you have something?
I do. I think some people, when we talk about mystics, they're like, well, that seems like a bad thing. And the first time somebody said it to me, they're like, actually, they said to me, you're a mystic. And I'm like, I don't think so. Mom, like, that's not even a good thing. That means something bad. And she's like, no, it's someone who actually loves God more than the natural world. And I was like, oh, well, I am one. I definitely am one. Yeah. And so anybody out there that's listening and going, well, what's a mystic? Because unfortunately it has been covered and hidden. Start looking up what the mystics actually walked in. Yeah. And we should walk in more than what they've walked in. Totally. They're just little pieces of what has been seen.
Yeah.
But God's wanting to take us above and beyond even that.
Yeah. No, it's so good. Well, and it's like, I feel like the amount of things that are for Christians that the enemy has totally taken and used it in a way that we now as Christians feel like when you hear that, you're like, oh, we don't, that's not a thing.
Levitation.
Well, then when you start looking into it, it's like, no, actually, we have that's actually was our thing first.
Right, our thing first.
And we should be doing all that. And yet he took, like the devil took that and just totally twisted it. And then you have a whole generation of people that are just feel like they aren't supposed to go into that arena.
You have hundreds of years of that.
Right. Totally. And so it'll be awesome to even see with this school people that are put into a place where they are able to, like you said, look in all directions, sunroof, all the different areas and be able, and I know that's one of our big things is like in any avenue to be able to have students come in, teach them, grow them, and then have them come out and even, okay, what do you think about that from a lens that is a godly perspective and not just intellectually, not just spirit, but like in all areas, what does this look like? Beautiful. What is God saying? So I'm really excited. It'll be fun. Again, for those of you, I know we already have another one of these coming out, but January 9th to July 6th, I believe, school will be, it's $9,000. I know it's a lot of money, but hey, Dave, you said it perfectly. All of God's ideas, money will just flow to that. And so if that's
God's ideas.
If that's supposed to happen, I know I've said this before. Both times that I did schools, I didn't have the money for it. Yeah. And people just came up to me and gave me money, and even people giving me money. And when God was, for me, that was a really hard thing. And when God was finally like, give that away and give that to somebody else, and I was like, I need this to pay the school. Me giving it away, it was like, it totally just, somebody else came up, hey, I felt like I'm supposed to get this, the exact amount of money I'm supposed to get. And so it really is true. Like if that's something that is the thing that is keeping you from doing it, don't let it come through, and God will make it happen. So
let me say this, Bailey. Without faith, it's not possible to please God. The basic first level of growing in faith is faith for finances. Far before you'll have faith to raise the dead or to walk on water or to transport or anything else, you'll have to grow into faith for finances. It's the first level. So if you're out there and feel the stirring of God to be part of the School of Champions, trust God to bring in the finances, and then write a letter, talk to people, send out your vision, and ask people to help support you in it. And like Bailey mentioned, money flows to God's ideas.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, awesome. Good stuff. If you have any more questions or anything that you need answers for, socgt.com is the website. And then you can also go to our website, churchofgodstidings.com. Again, it will be starting in January 9th. So feel free to reach out. And, have a great day.
Awesome.